today to share some of my concerns and research interest in the field of localized therapy of genital infections. I will focus quite a lot on sexually transmitted infections, and I will focus mostly on vaginal infections, but of course genital infections include both genders, and it is maybe time that we try to highlight the importance of treatment for both genders as well. However, there will be differences in how to approach treating, for example, male patients to female. I will focus also on nanomedicine potential in treating, because I believe that nanomedicine offers some advantages. Of course, it can be different types of delivery systems, which are also widely and successfully used to treat infections. So my talk today will be divided in three parts. First, I would like to give you one overview over why I think that sexually transmitted infections and genital infections are so important. I will address the problem we are facing with antimicrobial resistance, which applies also to the treatment of genital infections. And then I will go through some of the challenges in delivering the systems for localized vaginal therapy, and also some of our research interest and recent results in the past few years of what would be the way we propose to address these issues. So first of all, when we talk about sexually transmitted diseases, somehow it was uh, accepted in general public that we have a full control. The HIV was the horrible event which happened, but somehow we responded very fast. A lot of research was going on. There are some drugs to treat, and somehow sexually transmitted diseases or infections become in a way neglected topic. But unfortunately, since 2015, we are continuously witnessing increase in incidence of sexually transmitted infections. And to complicate the situation even further, we also witness a rising antimicrobial resistance. So as a consequence, we have a sexually transmitted infections with very often limited therapy options. And that should raise the concerns, and that, of course, will raise public awareness as well. So we had this unfortunate event in 2018 when gonorrhea, or so-called super gonorrhea, became the headline in a Time magazine, when first case in UK based case was registered of gonorrhea not responding to any available treatment. And at the same time, with rising the public awareness, still not fully or to the level we would expect, we have initiatives by World Health Organizations who is following the health burden of four most common sexually transmitted infections: chlamydia, gonorrhea, trichomoniasis, and syphilis. And I was quite surprised to see syphilis there, because long back when I was a student, pharmacy student, syphilis was considered a disease which is slowly disappearing. So some estimates said that approximately 1 million of new cases of sexually transmitted infections are registered daily, which is alarming number. Of course, we can argue that we have a better systems in registering the diseases, that maybe we have better databases, that sharing information improved. So that is for sure one of the factors we should not neglect. But we also have to look at the numbers, and numbers are quite scary. And moreover, the numbers are not localized, for example, for some continents or developing country, they are really happening worldwide. So I use this graph from British Columbia Center for Disease Control in Canada, where you can see the registered number of infections per year, and to our in a way knowledge, we can see that HIV is more or less kept numbers constant, but suddenly we have this increase in syphilis, dramatic increase in gonorrhea, and with concerns on the treatment option, and then we have really almost exponential increase in chlamydia cases, and in country with one of the best healthcare systems in the world. So definitely there is a time to start discussing the increased number, and there is a time to start discussing better or superior treatment options. So just briefly, I know that we are not into infectious diseases, but just briefly, I would like to guide you through what are we talking when we talk about treatment of different kind of infections. So most commonly we have this vaginosis caused by yeast, bacteria, and trichomoniasis. This is the condition which is rather highly prevalent but also underreported. Many countries will allow OTC treatment, so we don't have really the real number of cases. But what is particularly alarming is that these treatments are so poorly able to, in a way, eradicate the condition, and recurrence rate in treatment of vaginosis is approximately 70 or even more %. That means that treatment which is currently given is failing to completely eradicate or control the condition, and there is room for improvement, and that improvement should be quite fast. Then we have the viral, even more challenging infections such as herpes simplex infection, which is rather prevalent in Scandinavia. And we have papilloma, human papilloma virus, which also the public opinion was somehow that with the vaccine, particularly vaccination of the youth, this issue of HPV infection is somehow solved or will be soon solved. But again, if we look at the data, we can see that the effect of the vaccination is clearly age dependent. So we can see that, for example, in youth, the number of cases is decreasing, but we have the population still of reproductive age in their 30s and later in 40s, where still the number of HPV infections is decreasing. And we know that they have very serious consequences. I will not talk today about the HIV infections because from point of view of localized therapy, we are mostly concerned with microbicides. Of course, I have to mention it that this is the very serious concern, and we have these regional parts where there are very more serious concerns, but somehow we have to focus in the presentations on something which I am more working with. So I would just like to keep everyone's attention that HIV remains to be a challenge in spite of relatively available therapy. What we are particularly interested in our group is chlamydia. Chlamydia, as I showed you, is dramatically increasing in its incidence, and it is also one of the bacteria which can cause asymptomatic infections, so very often is underreported and can be probably underestimated. What is also quite challenging with chlamydia, that we have almost monthly reports on resistance among antibiotics. We are regularly prescribing as oral treatment. So it's almost a question of time when will this um, antibiotics become resistant and what will be our options to treat. So if we now look at the epidemiology of the sexually transmitted infections, you will see, and genital infections, you will see that we have rather, I hope I convinced you that we have rather alarming situation. At the same time, we are all aware that we have rising antimicrobial resistance. So what really to do? And even if not involved in the field of development of new antibiotics, we are all aware that bacteria and microorganisms are smart and they respond quite fast to the um, novel antibiotics. Here is a very nice overview, recent overview on gonorrhea, which is gaining a lot of attention recently because of the resistance, where you can see through the years how in a way bacteria responds a few years after a novel treatment is proposed and available. It's getting more and more evidence on the resistance. So there are pessimists in the field who believe that we might have gonorrhea can be considered in few years time untreatable disease. We hope this is not going to happen, but it is something to consider and to put more efforts in research. What we also know in recent years, and we have evidences, we suspected, but we have evidences, is that when we talk about these infections, very often we are dealing with biofilms, polymicrobial biofilms. Here you can see a very nice images of Gardnerella vaginalis and Atopobium vaginae, which is a clear visual evidence that we don't deal with a single type of microorganisms, that we have these polymicrobial networks of the bacteria and different organisms, which are definitely complicating the situation even further. So what is our hypothesis, or what has been our hypothesis in the past years? We believe that if we try to treat the genital infections as well as, for example, skin infections, but in this case, vaginal infections locally, if we try to achieve the high local drug concentration without exposing our body to the systemic effect of antibiotics or antimicrobials, we might have a chance to reduce the antimicrobial resistance. We believe that to do so, to achieve efficient localized concentration, we need nanocarriers to help us because many of the molecules we are dealing with, either drugs or active molecules, are poorly soluble, unstable. So nanocarrier would be a smart solution in a way to deliver this molecules. And then what we are also interested in is the choice of antimicrobials. So when we talk about antimicrobials, we can use the known antimicrobials. Maybe we can recycle some of them, which are cheap and available, but used by different routes. We can try to biomimic, use biomimetics, for example, as approach to learn from nature, or we can try to utilize some of the natural origin substances, which are rather safe and which have some beneficial properties, and that would mean they would have antimicrobial potential as well as some other interesting, such as anti-inflammatory, for example, antioxidant and similar. So this is what is our starting point in research. So I tried to make one very pinkish slides. I was somehow in the mood to make it a more feminine slide. When we talk about localized therapy of vaginal infections, how I see the challenge is that we have an interplay between four different important components. One is the challenge of the site. So vaginal site, I will talk a little bit more about it. And then response through development of formulation, which would address the challenges of site and which would also be user friendly, because we have to remember that to improve the therapy, it is not only the efficiency, the patients need to feel comfortable and need to, in a way, accept the formulation. Therefore, formulation has many purposes, and we have to put this friendliness and acceptability little bit more in focus. And then comes the choice of the active drug or active ingredient, active molecule. And here we have to bear in mind the problem of antimicrobial resistance. And finally, we have to maintain the safety of the formulation, and that is particularly important when we talk about pregnant patients. And unfortunately, pregnant women are equally vulnerable to sexually transmitted infections, and they have very limited options which would be safe for the fetus, for example. So more focus need to be put on the safety in pregnancy. Of course, we have to consider the irritancy and restoring or maintaining the microflora, which natural microflora, restoring of natural microflora is very important for successful therapy, as well as for normal functioning of vaginal site. So where to start in a way, and what would be the right approach? It's very difficult to mention, but there are some points which I believe are important and we have to keep in mind. First of all, very often we neglect that there is vaginal microbiome, which has a very important function to in a way maintain homeostasis. And this is one dynamic ecosystem. In female, this dynamic ecosystem is affected by estrogen levels, by lactobacilli, and by low pH. What we also are gaining more and more knowledge is the vaginal microbiome, and we get more information, but somehow we neglected so far the microbiome, which is the Candida albicans presence, and it is believed that somehow we have Candida albicans and that is enough. But those working in the field of treating fungal infections are gaining more information on other species and variants present there and their interplay. What we also know that when we have a vaginal dysbiosis, we have issue not only of the infection, but we have very often this desquamative inflammatory vaginitis, which would require not only treating the infection, but treating the inflammation as well. And as I mentioned earlier, we have these polymicrobial biofilms, which are stressing the need to understand and to, in a way, address the complexity more than what we used to think. The extracellular matrix, of course, will also serve as a physical barrier to different type of drugs, including, for example, antibiotics. So what do we know about vaginal site? I am sure that all of you remember. I will not go much into the details, but when we look at the epithelium, we have this variation in the epithelial thickness throughout the menstrual cycle, and that variation is relevant for example, infections treatment, which should reach the epithelium site. So it's something we have to consider when designing the formulation. And not only that, this is varying throughout the menstrual cycle, its thickness is also dependent on the age, on enzymatic activity and similar. Vagina does not have a glands, however, it secretes a large amount of fluid. And again, this fluid is not something we can easily control because its volume, composition, rheological properties, which are very important for the formulation, are changing through the menstrual cycle as well as the age. So very often we can, when designing the formulation, we should keep in mind that we have this premenopausal and postmenopausal woman, and changes in the pH, in the vaginal fluid, as well as epithelial thickness, can be different in these two age group. As I said, the normal pH is very important for the, in a way, defense action of vagina, but we know that this pH is increased in infection, but it's also increased in the menstruation, for example, act of coitus or the cervical mucus discharge, as well as in postmenopausal woman. If we would try to look at the vagina site as a vagina as a site for the systemic administration, what we are not focused right now, we also have to consider that permeability of vagina as a membrane kind of is dependent on the estrogen concentration, and also sometimes that unprotected sexual intercourse can also affect on the fluid production and can act on the drug release, which would be the case, or some limitations of some microbicides, for example. So we have a rather complex situation, and then comes the next barrier, and that is the mucus. Now, many of you here are expert in mucosal drug delivery for different routes and sites of drug administration. I would just like a little bit to address the issue of mucus in vaginal localized vaginal drug therapy. Now, it was assumed for many years that the mucus has kind of, among other roles, can also act as a protection against, for example, viruses, and it was believed that HPV, which is in diameter around 50 nanometer, can readily pass through this mucus, but herpes simplex, which is 3 times the size, is somehow slowed down. And then in the pioneering work of Professor Hannes and Professor Sarmento and the Sneves group, came in a way discussion that is this mucoadhesion really the something which the pores are so limited and defined, and would this mucus act or behave equally if we have, for example, particles such as nanoparticles, which would have different surface properties. And I will address this a little bit later. I just want to remind everyone that when we talk about the mucus as a protection against the viruses, we have very clear evidences that women suffering from, for example, vaginal vaginosis will have this protective role reduced, and that's why they are much more prone to HIV infections. So what would be one ideal drug delivery system look like? We have to now put all what I try to address in one interplay and look at the reformulation which can address all challenges. But there are three important or maybe 4 important factors we have to consider when optimizing a therapy, and that is that our drug or active molecule needs to remain stable. We should have a certain control over its release in vaginal cavity, and we have to assure that this active molecule is present within vaginal site for a sufficient time. That means we have to control the residence time, and we have to assure that it is uniformly distributed. And that is quite challenging because you know that vagina is in a way opposite to gravitational located opposite to gravitational settlement. So we really have to somehow consider how the formulation can address this uniform distribution and how to assure the residence time, sufficient residence time for drug or active molecule to act. So maybe the easiest way would be to start with mucoadhesive drug delivery systems, and they can be hydrogels, they can be, for example, films, they can be different nanoparticles. We in our group we studied mostly liposomes as a mucoadhesive, coated liposomes as a mucoadhesive drug delivery system. The idea was that liposomes should in a way interact in close contact with mucus, assuring the prolonged residence time. As I said, that would depend on what is really the aim of the therapy. So it is not as simple, as straightforward as we would in a way like. So currently we could discuss more that the question would be to penetrate or to adhere, whether we are aiming at the mucosal site or we are aiming and passing through the mucus and reaching deeper epithelial layers, which are particularly important when we talk about viral infection. It is very hard, and I would not dare to comment which would be superior or equal, but I would say that we have to look at the exact infection time and try to optimize the formulation. But it is important to remember that both options have certain advantages and both are studied widely in literature. So what we now a little bit more on our interest. So what we did, here is my Wenke Joraholmen, who was the master student and PhD student in our group, as well as postdoc, and who is now the associate professor. She worked quite a lot with modifications of liposomal surface for different purposes, both, for example, with mucoadhesive liposomes and mucus penetrating liposomes, for example, with interferon. And that would be in a way the direct comparison, but we also then looked a little bit what would be the active, what is the molecule we are interested in, and there are very many choices or very limited choices, depend how optimistic you are, but we can look at the approach whether we, for example, can learn from nature. Can we use nature? Because nature is, of course, quite smart. And also approach, are we looking at the so-called Ehrlich's magic bullet, one target, one molecule approach, or should we look at the magic shotguns at molecules which have different targets and which in a way provide multi-action, or should we start to maybe recycle a little bit more? We were very encouraged with looking into the nature and trying to use natural origin substances by the fact that in 2006, almost an unthinkable happened, and that is that FDA approved the standardized extract rather than a single molecule of green tea leaves, and it was approved for the topical treatment of anogenital warts, which are virus infections. So in that line, we started to look more into the natural origin substances, but I will first a little bit show some of the data we had on the recycle approach. So what we look in collaboration with Željka Pavelić-Urbanić, she was my first master student in career, my first PhD student, and is very close collaborator from University of Zagreb. So we recently looked at azithromycin liposomes as a localized therapy for cervicovaginal bacterial infections, and we challenged the formulation of deformable liposomes against different type of microorganisms, and we got some encouraging results in, of course, I have to say, in vitro conditions. When we talk to this Nature and Magic Bullet, Magic Shotgun, there are some substances we strongly believe or our favorites. So one of them is curcumin. Curcumin, I'm sure you know a lot about curcumin, but what is interesting for us is it is very strong antioxidant with very strong anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial properties. It is very poorly soluble, has stability issues, so it's ideal candidate for the formulations. And we studied a lot curcumin both in skin and vaginal therapy. Then we also look at resveratrol. This is another polyphenol which is very challenging because of stability and solubility, and has also antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory properties. And then we have epicatechin that was inspired by the product on the standardized extract, which so far doesn't have that many antimicrobial evidences, but we got some quite interesting results, and we believe that there is more potential in that particular molecule. And then recently, pre-corona time, we had a visit from Barbara Giordani from University of Bologna. She was extremely hardworking person, so we decided that she can handle two active molecules in one liposomes. So she worked with quercetin and gallic acid, targeting candida infections, and we got very encouraging results, both on the anti-inflammatory, anti-candida activity, but also there is a strong potential of this formulation to treat itching, and itching is one of the symptoms of many of the vaginal vaginal infections. So we hope that together with Barbara, who is now postdoc at Bologna University, we can expand this line of research. And then the question of the residence at the site of the infection, or somehow can we bring something more, not necessarily two molecules in one liposomes, but can we make a user-friendly formulation, because you are aware that liposomes are suspensions, so they might have a leakage effect from vaginal site. So we focus then on secondary vehicles such as hydrogel. So we proposed that we use hydrogel as a base for nanoparticles. In our case, it would be liposomes. And then if these liposomes are carrying some antimicrobial active molecule or drug, they could in a way contribute both from the point of view of the formulation, rheology, texture properties, residence time, but chitosan as a choice of hydrogel offers also serious advantages, because it has antimicrobial wound healing properties, a lot of beneficial properties. So this kind of system was widely studied in our research group, and going back to resveratrol, Mai Wenke did as her postdoc a very interesting challenge where she prepared resveratrol liposomes incorporated in hydrogel, chitosan hydrogels, and challenged them directly in vitro in chlamydia infections, and the results were very encouraging, and she's continuing this line of research further. What we also notice that chitosan is enhancing activity of almost every molecule we are in a way formulating in chitosan formulation. Then we thought it would be very interesting to look how important is the form of the chitosan we are working with. So a master student, Abhilasha Bhargava, she compared chitosan hydrogel, empty chitosan hydrogel, no active molecule, to chitosan-coated liposomes and challenged those formulations against clinical isolates of Staphylococcus aureus and epidermidis, and we got very encouraging results where chitosan on its own could in a way address the show bacterial effect. But what was more important is that we showed that this effect was dependent on the formulation type, and also was dependent on the type of the microorganisms, which opens the opportunities to explore and to formulate, for example, formulation targeting specific type of the infection. Now, one has to also address the fact that suddenly we have a pharmaceutical ingredient, which is also active ingredient. And our chitosan is a product of local company Kitinur, who is now supplying worldwide chitosan of very high quality, but they are now facing the challenges to, in a way, handle the fact that their ingredients have also certain efficacy, although highly beneficial efficacy, but still that would require probably some registration challenges, and that is maybe not always good news for the manufacturer, but it's excellent news for us. And the very future, what is currently in the pipeline would be to use some of the, for example, antimicrobial peptides. Here is Lisa, the PhD student in our group, who is currently exploring these amphipathic scaffolds from the library of Professor Strom down the corridor, head of the medicinal chemistry department, who is designing and synthesizing a novel peptides targeting particularly multi-resistant bacteria. Lisa is currently working on skin infections, but we hope that the last stage of her work will involve also vaginal infections. So what I would like, I hope the time is, I am okay. What I would like for you to think about it is, first, I hope that I convinced you that genital infections, sexually transmitted infections, are very serious concern, and that there is a lot of room for better therapy options. And our aim would be localized therapy options. We are looking for the new approaches. We have to probably challenge some of the dogmas while raising the public awareness. We talk too little about, somehow we believe that this is the question of past and that we have a control. Unfortunately, we don't have control. What is also missing for us who are formulation scientists is the models to predict qualitative and quantitative profiles. In our group, you know that Göril is the expert in the penetration, permeation of the various molecules through in vitro models. So in collaboration with Göril, we started working on the mucus PVPA models to mimic vaginal site, and we challenged some of the formulations, and we hope to go further. And what is really lacking, particularly in Europe with very tight and strict regulation on use of animals, we have limited access to animal infection models, and that would be the ultimate proof of the concept before reaching the clinical setting, hopefully with some of the formulations. So I would like to take the last message as something, it is the last moment, I think, that we start addressing the challenge of treating increased number of sexually transmitted infections in the time of antimicrobial resistance. And we are we are in need to look and think out of box and maybe try to find some substances or different approaches to tackle the challenges more efficiently. So in order for us to proceed, I have to say it is quite struggling to get the funding to treat genital infections. First, we are advised not to use term vaginal infections because this is a one gender. So genital infections would open more opportunities, but I was lucky enough to have some of the important fundings for progress of our line of research, and that was Phospholipid Research Center from Heidelberg, a non-profit, non-governmental organization of Norwegian women who supported my Wenche's PhD project, and Helsenor, it's a regional Northern Norwegian health authorities funding for her project on chlamydia treatment. And we are very grateful to Kitinor for continuous support in providing free, high quality chitosan samples. And we hoped for more funding to come to expand our line of research. In order to function, one has to have optimal site and optimal conditions. And I would say that if there is optimal, then our research, drug transport and delivery research group is optimal. I cannot thank them enough for being so inspiring, friendly, a wonderful environment in the stressful times in academia. It's very important to have their support, and they do a lot of cool things, and I hope that we can share some of the findings even more. Today was focused on vaginal therapy. And it is not only the group, you also have to have a super optimal condition, and that you can see is Tromsø in the same colors of my slides. So I match the slides to the nature. I biomimic the nature, and nature is 3 weeks ago taking photo of Tromsø where we have still snow, but we have this wonderful pinkish purple sea and sky. And I hope that in the post-COVID pandemic, many of you who were not yet can visit us, and that we can do many joint collaborations, many interesting projects together, as I tried to address today, but many more. And thank you so much for your attention. I hope that the time is okay and that I didn't overwhelm you with all scary numbers. I just wanted you to think that there are a lot of interesting things we can do and very important for the general public. Thank you very much, and I am open for the discussions.